Hi, welcome to the channel. Today I've got a project that I'm doing for our good old cousin Bill. He's got an old chainsaw, old Homelite. It's got some issues. One obvious. And what I suspect is the reason for this issue is the fact that it won't turn over either. So I thought this would be a fun challenge. I'd like to start by getting it to turn over, because if it's locked up and the piston is frozen in the cylinder, then it doesn't matter or not whether you can pull the cord. So what I'll do is I'll start by removing the spark plug, getting some lubricant in the cylinder, and see if I can break that cylinder loose. If this rope is all the way out to the end, it's not going to do me any good to try to help to turn it over, so I'm probably going to have to take the face of this cover off too, so that I'll be able to get to the flywheel and be able to turn it. So I'll start by removing this spark plug and getting some fluid in there. Wow, with the spark plug out, there should be a gap. There is no gap whatsoever. So, well, that is the reason why it wouldn't start. But it's still locked up. So, how long ago did it foul out? How long has it been setting? Did it just lock up from setting? Maybe humidity, a little rust. Maybe you got fuel built up in there, and that locked up the cylinder just from hydraulic pressure. Let's investigate. It's turning. Not much, and it's hard to turn. It did turn just a little. I've done a little bit of investigating. You got to take the whole casing apart and slide the engine out of the casing in order to work on it. Just to work on the carburetor, you've got to completely blow this whole thing apart. So it's a labor nightmare. I mentioned it to Bill while I was investigating this, and he said, well, don't worry about it. And I said, no, this is a challenge for me. That's a beautiful gunk. That's locked up. The motor's not. The motor turns free, smooth. It's beautiful. So, could we get that lucky? Clean a spark plug and fix a pull rope? And that'd be awesome. Nice and smooth. It actually has a pretty good pop to the cylinder too. It's got some compression to it. You'll notice it doesn't have much safety device on this. It's a pretty old machine. Now this thing should be spring loaded. It'll have a pretty good snake in there that comes flying out at us. I've never had this thing apart before or anything like it. So about all I can do is guess. I got some progress getting it to turn. Whoa! Uh-oh. I released the demon. Don't do that. Could be saved. It's gonna be some work though. Had to come out. It's not ruined yet. We'll keep going. I thought it had a break in it, but it's actually got an overlapping coil with a rivet through it so that it will hold it. Quite a nice feature, actually. So this is the cause of the lockup. This center shaft is aluminum, and it's gotten some moisture in there, and it's swollen from it breaking down and oxidizing. So I'll have to take a little sandpaper and sand that down so I can get it to move freely. Very nice. It's even got just a little bit of slop in it now. I can drop some oil around that shaft once I figure out how to get the spring back in. I think I'm going to have to reverse this. I got the spring in the casing, but I think the spring needs to be on here. And then I can slide it into place. In order to have enough of the coil pulling this handle all the way back in, I'm probably going to need to turn this several times to get some tension on it, and then slide it down into place. I finally have it all together. Now I just have to figure out how to adjust the tension. So it should coil itself all the way back in. I think some of it, maybe even a lot of it, is still a lot of grit all built up in there. I'm trying to clean it out as much as possible. I'm pretty confident I've got the spring coiled all the way to the point where this rope is all the way out. The spring is coiled as far as it can go. It's just taking everything to the limit. So now it's just a matter of breaking everything loose. Well, sounds good. Everything's smooth. I'm going to just file this spark plug. I'll take a wire brush, clean it up as much as I can, get a little file or a little sandpaper in there, get a good smooth clean spot for the spark to jump on. And it's just a matter of adding some fuel and some air. Cylinder looks clean inside. I don't see any moisture, residue, or rust on the cylinder from what part I can see, so this is looking good. Got a lot of compression. That's a great sign. I don't know if it's got any old fuel in it. Not a drop. Oh. We got thick, pasty green. Not good. That means the carburetor's a mess. With the green, that would be the oil that was in the gas mix. So most likely that oil is condensed in the carburetor, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of corrosion in the carburetor. That's probably also why the cylinder looks so clean. There's probably a lot of that was left in the residue when this thing was stored away many, many years ago. Who knows how long. Yeah, I think it'd be best to take the carburetor apart. Now the throttle linkage has got to come off of that trigger. Just fell off. And we got Looks like a air cleaner filter. And close. Just can't seem to get the spark plug boot to clear the housing. And we're out. That is the oil to lubricate the chain. I don't think you should have anything rattling around inside of it. But the oil inside's clean. Well, there is the carburetor. I'll take these screws off. I'll blow this thing all apart and see what it looks like inside, but just from an outside inspection, it's actually pretty clean. Everything moves freely. Your choke and your throttle. Sometimes it's better to just get a whole new carburetor if you can find one than it is to get a kit. I've been looking, just kind of researching a little bit, and these carburetors run about $25 to $35. They're pretty inexpensive, and the kits are around $17. If you're not one to really tear into it and replace all the little parts and get everything all in sync, why not just replace it? Now I'm going to clean this up because I don't want to get a lot of grit in here when I start taking it apart, and I want a clean surface to work on so that if I have any little parts that fall out, I know where they are. Well, now that I got a fairly clean spot here to work in, I'll slowly take this thing apart. That gasket's in pretty good shape. There's typically a diaphragm. And this diaphragm's in really good shape as well. There's not any corrosion. With the aluminum, if this had a lot of moisture that had accumulated inside for whatever reason, they will corrode and get a lot of expansion with the aluminum. This is looking really good. So I'm just going to button this side back up. This is another diaphragm on the opposite side. This diaphragm runs the needle and seat that allows the fuel to enter. That'll regulate how much fuel, and when you get a lot of buildup and pressure when it's not running or idling, it'll slow the flow or shut it off. This all looks excellent. This is usually the culprit when these carburetors start to foul out or not work properly. This diaphragm will stretch, swell. Without having another new unused diaphragm to compare it to, you really don't know if it's gone too far. But just from a visual inspection of all this, everything looks so good, I'm going to risk it. I'll put it all back together. Mainly because this carburetor kit, I'm really having a hard time finding. If it was readily available, like a lot of them are, and fairly inexpensive, I wouldn't even question it. I'd just go ahead and replace it all. But since it's so difficult to find, we'll just go ahead and put all this back together. Especially since everything inside of this and the needle and seat is so clean. I thought for sure there would be a lot of oil buildup since I poured so much oil out of the fuel tank. I've had some of these carburetors apart over the years, and they're just so gunked up with disgusting old fuel and contaminants that I'm really shocked at how clean the inside of this carburetor is. Everything's really clean. Make sure everything lines up. I don't get it on backwards. Alright, with that all back together, let's try to start sliding all these parts back together. Of course, when I pulled this out, this linkage just fell off. So all I can do is envision how it was designed to go back together. It's a pretty clever idea on how this just slides into place. This one was in here, and these lines hooked up. I rinsed this fuel tank out really well. That one went back on easy. This looks good. Double checking everything, triple checking. All right. I'm not going to put any chain oil in for now. There's still just a little bit left in it. But I do need to put in some fuel. All right. In the run position, in the choke position, it sounds like it started to fire. We'll ease up on the choke. Does it run well? It idles well. Might idle a little bit high, but that is excellent. So there's a couple of idle screws and lean and rich screws. There's actually 3 adjusting mechanisms for the carburetor. So with those, it's just a little bit of a trial and error, and since it's running so good now, mischief managed. I am surprised. I thought this thing was garbage. I met the challenge. It runs. All right, I'll put the chain back on and the handle back on. Get this back to Bill. I'm sure he'll be excited to see it. It's an old beast. From everything that I could find, it's probably in the 80s. So it's a good machine. It'll do him well. this episode. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. Leave me a like. Really appreciate that. And leave me a comment. Love hearing from you. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye for now.